welcome to the Wildline podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the old box office. So this was an interesting weekend. We're going to do a little weekend review here. We're going to talk about the top 10 and also talk about the elephant in the room of Rogue One, which it's really interesting how well it did and how poor it did at the same time. I actually went to go see it. I don't actually go to movies that often in the theater, which is weird. I don't know why. I love I love the box office so much, and I love movies, and I love reading about movie news and movie production. I actually don't go to the theater that often. It's just like way too expensive. I went to Rogue One on Friday, and it was for the ticket, I don't even know how much it was, but for the whole deal, and I like to go all out. You know, I'm going to get the popcorn, I'm going to get the soda, I'm going to get that combo that's like $15. And that's the best movie-going experience, is sitting down in a seat, eating popcorn, drinking your Diet Coke, and just watching the movie wash over you. As you can see, it's almost like a religious experience to me, so I actually don't go that often. But anyways, I went to Rogue One. The quality of the film is outstanding. I think it's one of the greatest blockbuster films I have ever seen in my life. I think it's leagues beyond The Force Awakens, which was a very fun film. I saw it 3 times in the theater, The Force Awakens. I'm actually going to go see Rogue One as soon as possible again. I thought it was just outstanding across the board. Felicity Jones is fantastic, but more than anything, the writing of the film and the production was just top tier. So I was a little bit surprised when the numbers started rolling in on Thursday night, the previews. And it only ended up doing $29 million for the Thursday night previews. And I believe Force Awakens did about 52, I think, or somewhere around the low 50s. So, Rogue One, right from the start this weekend, just was not in the same realm as The Force Awakens. And I found that a little bit surprising, but it's even more than that. So I'll just say this. The quality of the film was fantastic. I thought so. Critics thought so. It's like in the mid 80s on Rotten Tomatoes. The cinema score was a straight A. So the audiences that went to go see it, they loved it. The problem was not a ton of people went to go see it in terms of like it being one of the biggest films ever. It wasn't even one of the biggest. It wasn't the biggest film this year. Civil War beat it in terms of its opening weekend, and I believe Batman vs. Superman also beat it because that came in about 166. Now, if you told me that going into this year, you said that Civil War is going to do better than Rogue One, a Star Wars movie, after The Force Awakens did basically $248 million its opening weekend last year, I would have told you you're full of shit. And I would have said that, and did say that last week, and now I'm eating my words. I thought there was no way that this film would do below 160s. I thought that was the basement. Now, on a lot of the boards and stuff, and the nerds who are talking about this, the circles I travel in, people seem to be pretty happy with this. Oh, it's a side story. It's not really Star Wars. It's kind of like Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's not like a mainline story. I don't buy that shit. I honestly don't. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me why this film did not hit the 170s, 180s, low 200s for opening weekend. But before I'll do a deep dive on that and try and riff on that a bit and see what I can come up with. But let's just walk through the top 10 first before I do a deep dive on that. So coming in number 1, obviously, was Rogue One, Star Wars story. Ended up with $155 million this weekend. On a ton of screens, obviously. It's one of the biggest openings of the year. Almost 4,200 screens. Its per theater average was just north of $37,000 per theater, which is okay. It's not terrible. It's not terrible in general. It's fantastic, but when we're talking about the top movies ever, it's not that great, to be honest with you. And so it's at 155 now. I think it did yesterday was Monday. It did about, I want to say $18 million. I got to take a look actually and see exactly what it did yesterday. Pretty big drop from what people were thinking. I think a 52% drop. So I have no idea how this movie is going to play in the long run. I think obviously Holiday Legs is going to come to effect here. Holiday Legs is essentially movies that open during the holiday season, and this is like a couple of weeks before Christmas all the way through New Year's, usually have a ton of business during the week. It's a very different universe than the rest of the year in terms of how much money a movie makes on weekends versus weekdays and stuff like that. It's just everything's thrown up in the air. So I think Rogue One will have great legs. Let's just say it's at 155. Baseline, it's going to do 3x that, 3x multiplier at the end of the day. So you're talking at least 465, but that's even really low compared to what it should do. I'm thinking legs of maybe 3.5, 3.4. 3.5 would put it at about $540 million. So I think it's going to come where in between that. I think I'm looking at $520 million, something over $500 million, which I think is great. But I just can't help but being very disappointed by this opening weekend. And you'll probably feel like, in terms of just the voices in the box office world, that I'm probably the minority and being disappointed with this. I thought that there was a possibility that it just wouldn't connect with audiences. I don't know what happens. Like I gotta go into the rest of the top 10. I'll come back to it, but I'm just sort of perplexed by its performance. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, as obvious by my prediction last week that it would do about $195 million. So I was way off. Coming at number 2 this weekend was Moana, still sticking around, $12.7 million. Great 31% drop. It's starting to lose some screens here in its 4th weekend. Its per theater average was just about $3,500. Its total take so far from Moana is $162 million. This one also, I'm going to call it underperformer. I know people don't want to hear that either. Like there's no way. I think it's going to stick around and obviously break the 200. I hope break the 200 $200 mark, but I just don't understand what happened in this movie either. It should have done better than this. The quality of the film is super, super high, and I don't understand why people aren't showing up to it as much as, say, like Frozen was such an outlier that I can't use it as an example. But compare this to like Finding Dory and Secret Life of Pets. Secret Life of Pets looked trash. And I think, I can't remember what the critics said. I'll have to look it up. But it's not nearly as good as a film as Moana, says the critical consensus. So, what happened with Moana? It's like, everybody says that they love it and that they're not showing up for it. So it's still number 2, though. Those legs could really be long on this one, because this could last all the way through the new year, and it could end up, I guess in the 225-ish, 230-ish, something like that, hopefully. But again, kind of the tale of two stories here. Both Rogue One and Moana are Disney movies. They're both the number 1. They've had an unprecedentedly amazing, great box office year. Historical. It's one of the best ever for a studio. But I think the story with Rogue One and Moana is, really good performances, but not home runs, and I just find it fascinating that these films have not taken off like other films this year. Number 3 was Office Christmas Party. This is the ensemble comedy, came in at $8.6 million. Not a bad 49% drop. Not bad at all. Based on the audience reaction and the critical reaction to that film, I thought the drop would be in the high 50s. It's also a comedy. Comedies are like horror films. They tend to pop off the first weekend and then quickly dissipate. That's not the case with Office Christmas Party. Obviously, the theme of the movie, it being a holiday movie, helps that we're getting close to Christmas. People are in the mood to see a Christmas film. So that's probably had something to do with the low drop. It's at about $31 million, almost $32 million take so far. Overall, though, it's really kind of a depressed box office outside of Rogue One. I don't think Office Christmas Party is going to cross that profitability line. Its budget was way too high at $45 million. Its marketing costs were easily north of that for North America alone. I just don't see it making money. I think they're going to be disappointed with that take. But it's still number 3 on this strange box office weekend. Number 4 was a brand new wide opener, and one I talked about last weekend. I predicted $10 million for Collateral Beauty, and I called that a huge flop. It actually made even less than that. So this is the worst opening ever for Will Smith as a wide release. $7.1 million on 3,000 screens about. Its per theater average on its opening weekend was $2,000 or $2,300 essentially. That is disaster zone. This is epic floppage. Again, it's going to have holiday legs because, Christmas is coming up this weekend. People are off this week. It's going to make some money back here. So I don't think it's going to do like a 2x multiplier or anything like that. It's not going to end up with $14 million. It'll probably end up with at least the low 20s. But quite a disaster for this film. And what this really comes down to is Will Smith is not really a bankable movie star anymore. And there's been a whole slew of articles about this, how the movie star is dead and like nobody can carry movies anymore, and there's only like a few people that can really drive an audience out to the movie theater no matter what the project or movie is. Will Smith, I felt like, used to be one of those people, but he was also from a different era. Like in the 90s and early 2000s, you could get people to go to a movie theater just based on who the star was, whether like Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise. Or Will Smith in something like Hancock, which was just maybe like way before its time in a way, like that weird superhero movie where he was like a normal depressed dude and kind of like an alcoholic, really kind of dark side to the superhero genre. I think the fact that Will Smith was in that lead got people out to see that. He just doesn't have the draw anymore, I think, for a younger audience. And that's people, people under 30, I think. Will Smith is just not like the guy he was to me when I was growing up, he was, the star of Independence Day. He was like, oh, this guy's amazing. And he's also taken a different path. He's had like this Collateral Beauty. He does these sort of drama. It's not even a dramedy. I thought it had some comedic elements, but in the trailer, it just looks like a really sappy, boring film. Perfect for like people over 50 or 60 during the holiday season. They love this stuff. It's like catnip. But it just did not connect with audiences at all. The people that did see it liked it. It got a cinema score of A- if you take cinema score, realistically. But the critics really ripped into this in a way I haven't seen in a long time. I actually had a really fun time reading through some of the Collateral Beauty reviews. It's at 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is actually pretty low. This is why I trust the Rotten Tomato audience score more than I do cinema score. I don't know why. I just feel like cinema score has so much baggage with it. I don't know. There's like stuff this year that seems so out of place, like Ouija 2 coming in at a C, which is essentially like an F minus in a real score, a score that we're sort of like familiar with from school. But then audiences sort of enjoyed it, and it's like didn't on the Rotten Tomato score. It's like doesn't make any sense. But in any event, the Rotten Tomato score for Collateral Beauty was 14. Audience score was 68, which is not good. So it doesn't really align with a cinema score of A-. A cinema score of like B maybe. But that's why I feel like there's a huge disconnect there with cinema score. Enough of a cinema score rant. I feel like I go on a cinema score rant every show. But in any event, Collateral Beauty is just a disaster, I think, at this point. And Will Smith really has to, I think, think about what his career looks like as he sort of sunsets. He's probably in his mid to late 40s. I'll have to look that up. But he feels like he's going through this weird transition period. He's 48 now, where he either needs to get into producing or directing or just find different projects that really are just better for him. He's in that, like, in the 40s, men go through like this weird gulf where it's like, it's just like, what are you doing? Like, are you going to be a serious actor? Are you going to be a comedic actor? Are you going to transition into a more behind the scenes role? Like, so I'm thinking like much later in his life, but like Clint Eastwood transitioned over to being a director from, obviously an actor. I wonder what Will Smith's going to do. I think he's a wonderful actor, though, which is so frustrating. One movie he was in last year, Focus. Was that last year or this year? I think it was last year. He was fantastic in it. And he just played a really breezy kind of small film, but he did really well in it. And I don't know. I don't know what his path is right now. I hope he stays in acting because I think he's a wonderful actor. He just has to find the right projects. And in the past, he has chosen very poorly, like the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Oh my, what a disaster. So another disaster for Will Smith. Hopefully he can figure out some new projects. But yeah, Collateral Beauty might stick around for a bit, but definitely a huge flop. Number 5 this weekend was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. $5 million, decent 50% drop. We're looking at $207 million take so far for Fantastic Beasts. I've talked at length about this film. I think it's a decent performance for it. But again, honestly, kind of feels like Rogue One a little bit and kind of like Moana. Like I expected just a little bit more out of these films in terms of box office take. I don't know how long Fantastic Beasts is going to stick around. I think it might be a decent holiday film for people to go see, but it's been out for 5 weekends. So I don't know. People might just start. It's also losing a lot of screens, probably mostly to Rogue One. But yeah, I think it'll stick around for a bit. Maybe end up in the mid $200 million takes overall. Okay performance. Number 6, surprisingly. And 6 and 7 both surprisingly. Hell, 6, 7, 8 all surprises. You just wouldn't have expected these films to be in the top 10 at this time of year. Manchester by the Sea was number 6 with $4.2 million. This is part of its broader expansion, which I had talked about it happening. It might happen, it might not. It looks like it did. It's on 1,200 screens right now. And it's doing well. It's not... It's not doing gangbusters. It's not like its per theater average is $3,500. That's okay. Like that's a pretty average wide release opening. Its take so far is $14 million. This one, I don't know what their plan is with Manchester by the Sea. Everybody I know who's seen it says it's amazing. The critical scores, Rotten Tomatoes is in the high 90s, I believe. Everybody absolutely loves the film. I kind of want to see what the audience score is for Manchester by the Sea. It's got a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% score on the audience score for Manchester. I don't know. I'm kind of perplexed by their play here. I've been arguing and have been this whole sort of fall that limited release art films has to be a very specific vision for how they're going to roll it out. And I think Manchester by the Sea, it's in its 5th weekend. They've definitely tested the waters, slowly ramping up the release. I do sort of question why you're adding it to 800 screens the weekend Rogue One comes out. Here's what I would have done, and I don't know if this is even possible. Obviously, I'm an amateur outsider, but for whatever it's worth, the audience scores are very high. The critical scores are very high for Manchester by the Sea. I feel like you keep it well under 1,000 screens as long as you can, and almost like they used to do this when I think, as a kid. They would roll it out, obviously, to like New York, Los Angeles. But don't do concurrent releases. Don't roll it out to 1,000 screens at once and just try and do a money grab. I kind of feel like it failed this weekend. Sure, it's at number 6, but that per theater score is just not great for a wide release. It's okay. It's not a disaster. It's not a flop really, but it's sort of really middling. And to have a middling response to this film doesn't make any sense to me. So I kind of wish that they would have kept it well below 1,000 screens all the way through the Oscars and just sort of play it like a road show. Bring it to a couple new big cities each weekend, have it do well in those cities, and then kind of move it on to elsewhere to keep it in people's minds. So when the Oscar nominations come out in about a month, that it's still around, that it's still like, a popular film on people's minds. It's just like a different city is getting it, or a different group of cities is getting it each weekend. So they did what they did. It did okay. The problem here, and this is why I wouldn't have done this, like what's going to happen next weekend or this weekend? Like what's going to go on? Like who's going to keep going to see this movie now? When you just pumped it out to everybody, and they probably just didn't really think about, I don't know. It just seemed like, hey, let's just throw it at people and see if they go see it. Not a good idea. But who knows? Maybe it'll hold on for the Oscars in a month. I doubt it, though. I think that per theater average is going to get real low real quick. Number 7 was La La Land. This is probably the most excited I am for a film this year because I'm a effing hipster. So $4.1 million for La La Land. Big expansion. It was on five theaters last weekend. Did an insane $170,000 per screen. So now they're testing the waters on a wider release, and this one's going to go super wide pretty soon. I'm okay with that because this has wide appeal. This is definitely more of a mass market movie than Manchester by the Sea by a long shot. So they're starting to ramp up. It's on 200 screens this last weekend. Did $20,000 per screen. Actually $20,500 per screen. Its take so far is $5.3 million. That doesn't really matter. What matters is what's that per theater average going to do when they start bumping it out wider and wider. To me, this is almost the exact opposite of a movie like Manchester by the Sea or Nocturnal Animals or Miss Sloane, where they are distinctly art house films that's only going to play to a very small minority of the movie-going audience. I do feel like La La Land can be a big mass hit, almost like a Moulin Rouge-esque. Maybe not as big as Moulin Rouge. That was a huge movie. This is a little bit smaller, and I'm thinking it can do quite well. So I hope they push it out. I wish they pushed it out wide to all the AMCs and the Regals and stuff like that, and the Carmikes. I hope they pushed it out this week. And it's really, I feel like, a lost opportunity for them. The buzz is so high in this film. I'm going back to Milwaukee for the holidays, and I'm going to go see it, but it's only playing at the Oriental downtown Milwaukee. And it shouldn't be. It should be playing out in the suburbs like Heartland and Brookfield and all these other places in Delafield. Like, there's no reason La La Land is not in the movie theaters and like 2,000 theaters over Christmas. I think it's just a mistake, and I think they're gonna push it wider out in January, which I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe when they go wide in January, it's just gonna like really connect. But culture moves a lot faster now than it did 10, 20 years ago, and people hear about this film constantly, and they really, really want to see it. So I would put it in there in front of them as soon as possible. Basically, the exact opposite strategy than Manchester by the Sea, which is a slow burn you want in the background. Number 8, also surprising, obviously, that it's still around. Arrival, $3 million for the weekend. Decent 46% drop. It's starting to lose a lot of screens now. Lost almost 1,000 screens this weekend. Its per theater average is just about $1,400. Total gross so far is just under $90 million. I don't know if it's going to get to the 100 million mark. It might, but the end of this, the sort of big story on Arrival is that it has done incredibly well, way beyond, I think, the expectations of Paramount, which is fantastic because the same director is doing the new Blade Runner, which dropped, teaser trailer dropped yesterday, and it looks fantastic. I mean, just to hear that CS80 Yamaha synth and like Ryan Gosling and fucking Harrison Ford, it's going to be awesome. So I'm sure that they are glad that the director of Arrival is doing that. So Arrival, great. Number 9, Doctor Strange, still sticking around, $2.2 million. Nice 51% drop. Starting to lose theaters, lost about 800 theaters. That per theater average is getting pretty close to the $1,000 mark. So this will be gone really quickly. Once the holiday movies come out, I think Doctor Strange is going to be off the map here. Total take so far, $226 million. Fantastic. I think of all the big movies that have been coming out, I think Doctor Strange, performed the best versus expectations. Better than Fantastic Beasts. I think better than Moana, better than Rogue One. I think Doctor Strange, and this is, obviously Disney again, via Marvel. This has been the story for Marvel for the last, who knows, decade, I guess. How long are they going to last doing this? How long are they going to be hitting home runs every single time? But Doctor Strange is fantastic. Number 10, Nocturnal Animals. What a disaster. This is exactly how you do not release a limited art film. Don't push it wide like this. It's just a really bad idea. Only did $1.4 million. Terrible 55% drop for an art film like this. It's like 55% drop is not normally terrible, but like you're talking a very high quality film. And it's obvious that the audiences just didn't connect with this on a mass level. This is a New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago film. Like, this is not an Omaha, Nebraska film. Not to speak ill of Omaha, Nebraska, just different cultures, essentially. How well does an Indian movie play in like Minneapolis or something? Like, it's going to do okay, but it's not going to do amazing. It's like trying, when you play a movie like Nocturnal Animals, a Tom Ford film, in a city like San Antonio, you're essentially playing a foreign film, right? I mean, that people don't understand that, especially in American culture. There's so much difference between different regions and areas and cities in terms of what's acceptable culture and what's the social norms and what people are into, that it is really like playing a foreign film. And that's what happens is you get like its per theater average right now in its second weekend of wide release is under Doctor Strange's after its 7th week. I mean, it's very poor performance. This will be gone by the New Year's. I don't think it's going to be hardly anything. So a really poor move by Focus Features on that release. It's still on 1,200 screens. Won't be for much longer. Total take so far $8.8 million. When you compare it to other art films like Manchester by the Sea, Manchester by the Sea is at 14 and only going to go way up. But kind of in that boat, and that rounds with the top 10. But sort of in that boat was Miss Sloane, which I also went on long rants about over the last couple of weeks about why the hell would you release this film wide? It doesn't make any sense. It's a New York. And Miss Sloane is like a DC film. It's going to play well in DC, New York, maybe Los Angeles, but not a lot of other places. Maybe like Seattle or Portland. Well, maybe not Portland, Oregon, actually. It only did $500,000 this weekend. It's still on 1,400 screens, but listen to this drop from Miss Sloane. 75% drop. 7.5. Like, that has to be one of the worst of the year for a wide release. Just disaster across the board. And I called it 1,000 times. This is not going to do well wide. Why are you pushing it wide? Now, it's obviously it's a newer company, Europa. They're doing some new films this year. We'll see how they do, but they fell flat in their face with this. Essentially, its per theater average. Oh my god, its per theater average was $300. Like, I can't even find anything that low in the top 30. There's nothing else that low. So kind of a total disaster for Miss Sloane. This will be gone almost completely by this next weekend. Its total take so far $3.2 million. I think let's see if there's anything else that I want to talk about in the top 30, like maybe limited releases. Hacksaw Ridge is still doing well. Total take so far $62 million. Great. Almost Christmas, $41 million so far. Pretty good. Moonlight, $11.5 million. Great performance by that. Definitely going to get a Best Picture nom. Would bet my life on it. The only other sort of limited releases that are out are Jackie, which is doing okay. Its per theater average is not terrible right now. It's at $7,000 per theater on 84 screens. I thought that was going to do a lot better. I really did. I thought it was going to do a ton better than that. Just because there was so much buzz for Natalie Portman in that role. But it just didn't really connect with, I think, what's interesting about Jackie is I feel like it could have been a reverse of something like Manchester by the Sea or Nocturnal Animals. I feel like Jackie had a huge mass appeal to it. They just didn't market. They didn't put the marketing money behind it, and they didn't do a wide release right away. That's what I would have done with Jackie. And I also would have done that with another limited release that came out this weekend, which was Fences. Denzel Washington, sort of Oscar bait movie. I believe it was a play. But it did limited release on only 4 screens this weekend. $32,000 per screen. Now let's compare that with La La Land last weekend, which was on a similar amount of screens. $170K on its opening limited weekend. Jackie did $60,000 per theater. So this Fences is doing half what Jackie did on its limited release. This is a huge mistake. This is not connecting at all with audiences in the urban areas, and I guess it's probably just New York and Los Angeles. They didn't want to see this. I feel like this is the middle of America movie. I feel this is an Omaha film. Like, push it out wide, throw tons of marketing behind it. This could have been the Collateral beauty, but successful of this year. It's like a soft, not really soft. It's an adult film. It's an adult drama. And I have no idea why they pushed it out limited in New York and Los Angeles its first weekend. It's not a limited play film. So I don't know what Fences is going to do. Like, it may all of a sudden take off when usually you see those numbers per theater average sort of like collapse as it goes wide. Maybe this one plays okay wide now. I think it should have gone wide immediately. I'm not sure why they're doing limited release on this. But the bottom line is it failed a limited release its first week, and that's a failure of $32,000 per theater. So we'll see what it does when they go wide. Another one was Lion. I don't know that one too well. I know I think Nicole Kidman. Is it Dev Patel is also in that, I believe. Yeah, Dev Patel and Rooney Mara. Ooh, well, the best. Love Rooney Mara. So Lion's doing okay. It's, what was its per theater average this weekend? $8,000. It's going nowhere. Let's be honest. Anything south of 50K per theater average on less than 7 screens it's not going to go anywhere. But it might get some nominations. So is Fences. So we'll probably get some acting nominations. I think Viola Davis is also in Fences, isn't she? Yeah. They'll probably get nominations for Best Actor and Best Actor, but I don't think it's going to get nominated for Best Film. Yeah, I just don't get it. You got to play that one wide. So that's the top 10 with some sort of highlights. I guess I already did kind of a deep dive on Collateral Beauty. I think it's a failure on a whole variety of levels, but if I'm like taking a step back and I had to be like a consultant for Warner Brothers on that film, I would say this: the marketing was atrocious. Don't market films like that anymore. I don't know what Warner Brothers is going through. Like, their Fantastic Beasts marketing was also very bad, and they don't really have much else out there. I was trying to sort of what else they have recently. Storks, the marketing for Accountant was great. That's why it did so well. The Accountant made $85 million this year. What is happening? It's so weird. And that was released in September, I think. Yeah. They also did Storks. The marketing for Storks was actually really shitty. Collateral Beauty was just marketed wrong. It was marketed. When I saw the trailers, I was like, oh, what is this, 7 pounds again? That really kind of middlebrow film by Will Smith that came out who knows how long ago. I saw that opening weekend. I have no idea why. So I think the marketing was way off. You couldn't tell what the story was about. It seemed super trite. It seemed like a Lifetime movie. It had no edge to it, no pizzazz, no razzmatazz, as they used to say. There was no hook to that film. When I saw that trailer, it's like, oh, like he's talking to death. I was like, well, that's a stupid idea. Like, what is this? Like, what was that movie with Greg Kinnear in what the hell was it? Oh my God. It was like this Greg Kinnear movie, and it was so middling and stupid. And it almost looked like I'm not going to speak ill of any religions, but like Christian films tend to have low quality. The writing's bad, the acting's bad, the production quality's bad. Collateral Beauty felt like a Christian Lifetime movie almost when you saw the trailer. And I was like, what the F is this with that cast in there? Keira Knightley, Ed Norton. Who else is in there? There's a couple more people that are fantastic in it. Helen Mirren. Naomi Harris is fantastic. She's in Moonlight, I believe, isn't she? Yeah, she is. She plays his mother. Kate Winslet. Hey, what are you doing with that cast? And I don't know how good the movie is. Critics obviously destroyed it. Audiences felt a little bit better about it, but not that great. But then, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, a movie's a product. You got to move the product at the end of the day. Like, I don't understand why you couldn't move this product during this holiday season. Find a different way to market it, you know, find a different way to do the trailers that are going to get people excited. A really good example of great marketing this holiday season in terms of film is a movie that I have no desire to see. It comes out on Friday. It's called Why Him? It's with Bryan Cranston and James Franco. And it looks like the stupidest movie concept I've ever seen. You know, it's just some throwaway comedy about an older man and his daughter's marrying this sort of wild entrepreneur type who's got tattoos, swears a lot, very unorthodox. It's the straight man versus the crazy man sort of comedy routine. It looks stupid. It looks dumb. I have no desire to see it, but they did this fantastic trailer that came out, I'm going to say a few weeks ago, where they're playing scenes from the film where people are swearing, but they fill it in with like nonsense words instead of like the swear or the beep. And it worked so well. And I was like, maybe I want to see that. If they could, because to me, it's like, if they can make a trailer that good or that well, good or well, I'm really sure on that one. I guess it's good because it's an adjective. It's not an adverb. Sorry for a little English rant. If they can make a trailer that good, then why I can trust them more, essentially. I can trust them to spend my money and go see it and spend my hour and a half and get some good laughs out of it. With Collateral Beauty, it looked like, why would I ever want to go see that film? Like, I have a TV with Netflix and all these other options to entertain me. Why would I go out of my way to spend $20 to go see that? Like, no way. Because there's no hook. And so I think it was a marketing problem. Obviously, the final product was not good, but that's a whole nother story and a whole nother perspective on how you can view films and movies at box office. I'm mostly concerned with how it does opening weekend and sort of lesser concerned with how it plays out overall. Just because I'm really interested in how movie companies market films and how they get people in the seats and how they build hype. And how they get an audience of $179 million for Captain America Civil War, but can only get one of $155 million for Rogue One. And that'll be a good transition to start talking about a little bit more about Rogue One and its performance. I was, really surprised by this. And obviously I was very wrong. If you listen to the show, I said $195 million last week. And I was railing on these industry projections, thinking that it would do, 140, 150, 160. I was like, no way that's going to happen. It's a Star Wars film. Like, it's Star Wars, right? Like, why would it be that low? But something just didn't connect with the audiences in terms of marketing. When you look at the quality of the film, it's super high. The legs are going to be great for this, I think. Just because of the holiday season, I saw the movie. It is wonderful. But something didn't connect with the hype machine and social media and the general culture. For this film to make basically $100 million less the opening weekend than it did than Force Awakens, I'm trying to figure out like what that would be. It's not really 100 million less. It's like, Force Awakens did about 248. This one did 155. So I got $93 million less. And let's just assume that a ticket cost, I don't know, $9. So you're talking about 10.3 million people less saw this film. That's a lot of people. That is an enormous amount of people. And I cannot get into my head why that happened. Now, obviously, The Force Awakens was a huge event film. You had the prequels, which started in 99, ended in 2005, as I recall. They were not well received. They were well received at the time. I went to go see them all opening weekend and sometimes multiple times. I'm not even a huge Star Wars fan either. It's just like the the films are so grandiose that I just, as a cinema nerd, you just want to see them over and over again because they're just so expansive and beautiful and lush, and the sound production is phenomenal, and the visuals you can get lost in. Ironically enough, I didn't really like Avatar though, which seemed to have the same qualities, but the writing was so poor it was just trash. It's just confusing to me why The Force Awakens played so well beyond anybody's expectations. I think I predicted that high, but I was in the vast minority of people who predicted that high. Most people were saying low 200s, maybe even under 200 for Force Awakens. So when Rogue One started to come in, it seemed okay. Like, it wasn't a disaster, it wasn't a flop, but I this is definitely a middling performance for this film. To be beat by Civil War, Captain America Civil War, which is the third Captain America series, sort of advertised as Avengers 3, but not really. They didn't put Avengers in the name. Did $179 million in that weekend. I can't imagine. It's a fantastic film. It's probably pretty decent. And to have Batman versus Superman, which was, granted, two of the biggest superheroes out there, but did that play better opening weekend than Rogue One? It just doesn't add up to me. And it's I don't know. I think something felt, Rogue One is the top 12 box office opening film ever. It's just below The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, just above the original Hunger Games. But it's below, look at the films it's below. The Dark Knight Rises, Batman versus Superman, Harry Potter, Iron Man 3, Civil War, and obviously the Avengers, and on up to Jurassic World and The Force Awakens. I don't buy that this is a one-off story. I don't buy that it's the Doctor Strange of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That doesn't make any sense. This is a Star Wars film. I think Disney's probably pretty happy, I guess. Production budget was $200 million. The marketing budget on this had to be one of the highest ever in the history of film. They basically plastered TV and internet with ads for this film. And it just did not perform. Now, okay, let's think about reasons why. Okay, one, it's not The Force Awakens. That's the major line right now. Okay, Force Awakens was a special event. It was the return to form for Star Wars, back to the originals in terms of quality. I think everybody felt that going into it. It's J.J. Abrams. It looks amazing. Everybody's super hyped. It's not the prequels. George Lucas isn't involved anymore. This is Disney now. I think everybody was just hyper jazzed about it. So one-off film, okay. Rogue One obviously cannot replicate that, but it is connected to it. It is directly connected to The Force Awakens. So, I can understand that, like, you make the argument that Rogue One is just a different storyline, but it's still connected to The Force Awakens. So I don't buy that one-off thing. Okay, what else could it be then? If it's not the fact that it's a one-off story, it's literally connected to the storyline of The Force Awakens. It's essentially a prequel. So then what else? I think the fact that the lead in The Force Awakens was a woman, also with a man, but the woman was, I think, featured more, Rey. So you can play the feminist card on this too. Felicity Jones is clearly the lead of Rogue One. Obviously, there's a huge cast of characters that are involved, but she's the center of it. Like, is that the reason why? Is that maybe there's a depressed take on the box office because the female is the lead? I don't know. There's less Darth Vader in it. There's no Luke Skywalker. I mean, I can't really wrap my head around it. I think when it comes down to, maybe, I was talking about this with Collateral Beauty, it might just be a marketing problem. You had the quality film, you had the product that you needed. I just think they didn't take advantage. They played it too conservative with the marketing. The trailers were great. There are some stories about like reshoots and stuff like that, but it always happens with these films. So there's some weird buzz going on with it. I just don't think they took advantage of the product that they have and they didn't market it in a way that got people super hyped about it. The people who went to go see this opening weekend, like Star Wars, or just fascinated by blockbusters and wanted to see something really big and huge and fun, and it was that, but it didn't get the casual viewer to go, I don't think, and that's where the difference in the 100 million was over the first weekend. You didn't get the grandma hasn't been to a film in like 5 years to go see it with her grandkids. It just didn't have that mass 4-quadrant appeal for some reason. And I'm not sure why. I think it's probably also the fact that the story seemed small. And it's not small. When you see the film, it's wonderful and epic. But they played it in the marketing like it was a small one-off story, and they just didn't need to do that. They should have played up, this is a Star Wars movie. This is huge. This has all the same things that The Force Awakens had in terms of the music and the explosions and the weird planets and aliens and all the dramatic mythological storytelling. Rogue One to me is so much better than Force Awakens as a film, just so much better. But I think they marketed it as a smaller one-off, and they shouldn't have done that. They should have marketed it as, hey, this is the new Star Wars movie. Come out and see it. It's going to be awesome. You're going to have a great time. And that's what they missed. They missed that casual viewer who's like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, I want to have a good time. They didn't play to that. They played to this specific narrative of the film, which is darker in tone, which is a little bit more adult. Especially when you go see it. If I had a kid and I took a kid to go see this, you're going to have a hard conversation at the end of it, I think. And some of my friends who have kids are like, yeah, I'm not going to take my kids to see this. It is a little bit on the adult side, but like Captain War or like Civil War isn't, or Batman versus Superman was super dark. So I don't know, something happened with Rogue. Right now, I'm going to blame the marketing and just say they did not play up the Star Wars angle as much, and they played it down too much. Anyway, that's my take on it now. 155. We'll check out the legs on it and how it does over the holiday season. I think it'll end up in the mid 500s, definitely over 500 million, probably 520, 530, something like that. Which will be a great performance for it, but nowhere near the $930 million that The Force Awakens made, and that cannot be discounted because it is a part of that cinematic universe. Anyway, that's enough for me. I'll be back later this week, maybe even tomorrow, because I got to take off for the holidays here to talk about what's opening up. Oh wow, there's a couple I forgot this movie's open up tomorrow, so I might do a show tomorrow morning or something, just to talk about these new ones. Why Him comes out on Friday, but tomorrow Assassin's Creed Passengers and Sing come out, so I gotta run some numbers on those and see what they're doing. Limited release Patriots Day comes out. I'm interested to see how that does in terms of its Oscar potential. Fences is going wide this weekend. Then we're pretty quiet until next year, 2017, when the first big opener is Underworld Blood Wars. Can't wait to talk about that one. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. I'll be back maybe later today. Have a good one.